there's this organization called Dying with Dignity.
Yeah.
Okay. Dying with Dignity is evil.
Are they in relationship with MAiD, or are they separate entities?
They're pushing it.
Okay.
They're the ones pushing the bills. They're the ones funding it. They've got over $7 million on average sitting in their bank account. They're funded from somewhere, and I'm trying to figure it out right now.
Okay.
So MAiD, the expansion was pushed forward with them. They were lobbying. They were doing everything they could to. And what we've figured out is, and we've got leaked footage of them training doctors, stating that here's a case study. Here's Stacy. Stacy has a bunch of debt because Stacy's ill. Well, Stacy can't afford her to look after herself anymore. So due to her credit card debt, she should be a candidate for MAiD.
This is public?
This is public. I'll Google it and send it to you. I had to come with receipts if I'm talking about anything like this, because it's so much more than people are aware of, and that's because of Bill C-11. It's been strategically placed so that Americans and the rest of the world have a hard time seeing our media, and we have a hard time seeing your media unless we have VPNs. So the reason I got involved with MAiD was I got a phone call a couple years ago from a friend, another veteran, and he was like, Kelsie, one of our guys was just offered MAiD. And I said, sorry? And he goes, he lives in another country. He called his case manager looking for support for post-traumatic stress disorder and a traumatic brain injury. This is an ex-special operator, should 100% be given the support he needs. And in that, there's a voice recording of the case manager offering MAiD. So he wasn't alluding to being suicidal. He wasn't looking for that answer. He was looking for genuine help to heal. And they offered him MAiD. And that sparked a fire because they already use us as numbers. We're already expendable people. That's why when you get hurt, they're so quick to med board you out. You would think with the financial investment they put into you, they would want to keep you and turn you and get you healthy and then keep you in the service. That's not the case. So what had happened was he said, look, I'm going to leak this to a few people. We're going to send it to Rebel. We're going to send it around and see what happens. They did that. Then there was an inquiry brought into Ottawa. A couple other people came forward, other veterans. Another individual I've had on the show, Christine Gauthier. She's a Paralympian. She's a Canadian Olympic rower. She is also an Invictus Game gold medalist. She was one of the first artillery gunners. She's the people who paved the path for me. And due to the way she was told to do her training, she actually sustained a spinal injury because they didn't listen to the doctors. So she had then grown through the service with this injury due to service that was unnecessary. And she just needed wheels for a wheelchair and a wheelchair ramp to get in and out of her home. They offered her MAiD. We have all the documents. And then what we started to realize is how many people have been offered MAiD instead of treatment. After that, we kind of got a couple of us together and said, okay, we're going to start tackling this. They did the inquiry. It was an absolute disaster. They gave the veterans 5 minutes each, and then afterwards told them to their face that they're lying and that they had no proof. And then when the Veterans Affairs Minister went on Mercedes Stephenson, the West Block, he lied right to her face and said, no, it's only been one. When we have so much proof to prove otherwise. And they said it was only one case manager, but we found out it was different genders, so a male and a female, and they were on other different parts of the country in different offices. So this means this was being slow rolled out. And it always starts with veterans. Anything always starts in the veteran area, right? How can we exploit them and see what they'll push back on, and then we'll roll it to the rest of the world. And that's exactly what happened. The reason it got a lot heavier for me and I got brought into it a little more was a mutual friend of mine who owns this flooring company in BC called King of Floors. He's like, Kelsie, you got to talk to this woman named Alicia Duncan. And I was like, okay, why? Like, why? Relax. He got very amped. Her mother was killed with MAiD. And I was like, okay. And he goes, yeah, we don't think it was lawful. And I was like, whoa, okay. So the police were involved in this case. Long and short, Alicia and her sister have been fighting and are currently fighting for medical records because her mother was a psych nurse for over 20 years. And she had no mental health history at all. She got in a car accident, sustained a massive traumatic brain injury. And in Canada, where everyone thinks we have healthcare, it was over 18 months for her to see a specialist. And within a couple months, she went from perfectly healthy to pinning her bed sheets, 40 pins, like everything had to be smooth, pureeing all of her food. She wouldn't leave the house because she thought someone was going to sniper her.
Whoa.
And they brought this all forward, and behind everyone's back in the family, she went to the hospital and asked for MAiD. But here's where it got really dicey. All of the hospitals she went to are a conflict of interest. She used to run the hospital. So that's what MAiD does, is they don't inform the family members to stop it. They don't tell anyone. They don't ask for support. Hey, is there any other people around you we can talk to? They just take you on your word. What then happened was she was getting to the point where it was coming up, and her partner said, like, you have to tell the girls. So she told the girls, and they got a court injunction, and they got her held. And they said, we're in control now because you're not of sound of mind. And that's the whole thing MAiD is, right? Is there's two tracks. And one has to be foreseeable death, and one has to be unforeseeable, but something that is so damaging and life altering.
Suffering.
Yeah, great. So they consider, they have verbiage for it. But that being said, they are exploiting these two tracks, because one track can be done in a really short period of time, and the last track can be done up to 90 days. So long and short, they got the court injunction. The mother was so upset, she slit her wrists, okay? They found her on the floor. They brought her to the hospital. They held her. 2 days later, they enacted MAiD on her. By definition, under your own rules, you have to be sound of mind to make this decision. It's very clear that you were not. And so there's a lot more to that story. And we talked about it. I had Alicia on the show. We talked really in depth about her mother's case and what's going on there. And she is one of the most beautiful examples of what happens when you mess around with the wrong family. And because of her and so many of the other people in Canada, the new rollout was supposed to happen on March 17th. And that got stopped dead in its tracks. And that was all being funded and pushed forward by Dying with Dignity. Because they said, if you're a rape victim, you shouldn't have to live through that. So you should enact MAiD. Prisoners in Abbotsford Prison who were on life were choosing to use MAiD, and the government was paying for it. So there is so much more that's coming out. I'm in a Rebel documentary that's coming out. I think it's going to be out this month. Alicia and I are in another documentary with the UK with Liz Carr about this as well and the dangers of it. And really, it is eugenics wrapped around this compassionate, empathetic bow of we should help everyone. No one should be in any pain or suffering. We need better palliative care. We need preventative medicine. And we need to not let people get to this point where they think that they are better off dead than living on this earth. And it's tragic. So that's my whole involvement, is you mess around with my people and I have a voice, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, it seems to find the difference between what is considered suicide and then MAiD, it's very gray, because initially when I first heard about this and like those pods that were getting popular, I think in Switzerland or Sweden. The
death pods?
Yeah. For someone who's terminally ill, I think, of course, right? Like I just had to put my dog down. Like that is the compassionate thing to do. And if we say that an animal suffering is not okay, I think a person suffering from a terminal illness should also have that option, because otherwise you're leaving them to do it themselves. And that's terrifying and dangerous. And so if you can make it like, quote, safe and painless and so that they can have dignity at the end, that makes sense. But then you get into this slippery slope. And I usually hate those arguments, because people kind of use them to start from one point to get to something that's more ideological. And they're like, well, of course, this is going to be the natural progression. And you would say, well, no, of course, this exists in other countries. We do it with animals. Like this just seems like a medical necessity. And then you do see that they're trying to get it for 12-year-olds. So that has been pushed to 2027, correct? Yeah.
So they're essentially stating that the next election is where we're going to see an opportunity. If the Conservatives get in and Pierre gets in, that bill is going to be cut. And here's the thing that happens, and I'm sure you guys have seen this in America. I know you have. They will sandwich bills into other bills, and that's what they did with this. So
it's called like hog something. I don't know what it's called. There's my father-in-law. He's super into politics. He's like, this is just the way of politics. And I wish I could Google it, because I don't even know how I would begin to Google that phrase. But yeah, it's very normal for like, I'm going to get this, I'll give you this. And then by the end of it, you have a 1,000-page bill where everyone needs to get a piece.
And what had happened was Canada was reinforcing their abortion bill, and they slipped it in. So this is how it got extended. They had the sunset clause, and that is the thing that was terrifying. Was it was originally supposed to be in 2023, and then they pushed it to 20. And that's when I went and I did Pierce, and we were talking about it, and he was like, "What's going on?" And then it got pushed to 2024, and then we started getting as loud as we possibly could and talking to anyone that would listen, and just tagging every major person. And I always wondered. I thought to myself, why isn't Jordan talking about this? because our media is so heavily censored by Bill C-11. He's one of the only ones that's got that escape velocity in Canada. And I thought to myself, I'm like, why? I really wish somebody much bigger than me, because I can only yell as hard as I can yell, but I wish somebody much bigger than me would grab the reins of this and maybe break it down and go, okay, we need to be discussing this, because the majority of Canadians have no idea. And that's the wild thing. So Alicia and I are actually planning to go out on the streets, and we're going to interview some people and just ask them what's MAiD. Because most individuals have zero clue, meaning because they have no clue, their children have no clue. But what has happened is when they included younger individuals, we understand a lot of times those can be that groupthink, that social ideology that can get captured within that age. And what we've seen with so many other movements is they're going to exploit it. And the dangers and the fears are groups of younger humans convincing each other it's a better idea to die, almost like a suicide pact, if you will, that's funded by our taxpayer dollars.